Bilbao is a city in the Basque Country in northern Spain. And in the last years, it has gone through a, we could call it revolution in the transformation of the urban space, the environment, and the social aspects of the life in Bilbao. For that purpose, in 20 years ago, Bilbao Metropolis 30 was set up as a public-private partnership in charge of the revitalization process of the metropolitan area of Bilbao. So what I want to do now is to go through, very briefly through the story of the last 20 years in Bilbao. It was the initiative of the government in the different layers that we have in Bilbao: the Basque regional government, the government of Biscay, the province, and the city of Bilbao, all together made a decision to revitalize the metropolitan area of Bilbao, and at the same time to ask the private sector to help in this enormous task. That's why big companies such as Bank BBV, Iberdrola, the utility, or the local savings bank joined this effort from the outset. Today we have over 130 members, but the number is not what is really important here, but everyone who is somebody, you know, is a member of Bilbao Metropolis 30. Just to, in a nutshell, to be able to say and to express what Bilbao Metropolis 30 does, and the answer could be a kind of black and white negative of a photograph. We do nothing. Nothing real. Nothing that you can touch. Nothing that you can photograph. Because mostly our role is to advise leaders in the strategic lines for the future. So at the beginning of the process, at the beginning of the 90s, we set out with these 8 critical issues that by the time were, in my view, very advanced. You just think about a city like Bilbao in the metropolitan area going through serious problems because companies were closing down. The jobless rate was up to 30%. The environment was heavily polluted, and worst of all, people were not optimistic about their own future. So we came up through, we went through a strategic planning process and came up with these 8 critical issues that go from this investment in human resources, which even today is not exactly the kind of investment that people think, you know, about when you decide where to put your money. Then mobility and accessibility, that's about making the city more open and accessible, both to the visitors and at the same time to residents. Advanced services for an industrial hinterland. We believe that industry was, is, and will be part of our economy, and we still are a very important industrial area, but we can't deny the importance of services, so services for our industrial region are a critical part of our future. Urban regeneration, of course. Many of our surrounding urban areas were in a very bad state, years and years of dereliction and neglecting the necessary investments to build proper housing for workers, for people, and I won't go into political details about the dictatorship we had in Spain, but let's say that the urban regeneration was one of the critical issues that we had to face 20 years ago. Same can be said about our environment. We were defined as the most polluted area in Spain in air, water, and land as a consequence of our industrial activities for over 100 years. And then cultural centrality, and this came as a surprise because we had been for many years a port, an industrial city, and maybe a financial place. But what about culture? And I point out this critical issue because this is where the Guggenheim Museum came from, okay? I'll explain further later. And then public and private coordination, which has been a success in the last years, not only between the sectors, public and private, but inside the public sector itself, which is, as the politicians would recognize, rather more difficult to coordinate between or among the different political institutions than between the public sector and the private sector. And finally, social action, putting people and person in front of the process. So that was a success. In 1995, the Guggenheim Museum was open to the public. In 1997, the metro, and thereafter a number of big strategic infrastructures like the expansion of the port, new airport, the Congress Hall, and many, many, many others. So by the end of the 90s, we went into a reflection process and tried to find the next step. Tried to answer to the question that, now what? What's next? And the answer was the people. No, the people. And the people is, or are, the real asset that we have in Bilbao and in the Basque Country. We ran out of natural resources long time ago, and people is all what we have left. So we thought we better make sure that people were able to understand the changes taking place in the city, and at the same time, they had to learn how to use in their own benefit those changes. That's why we define values as our next step to make people realize the changes and profit from them. Innovation, professionalism, identity, community, and openness. So that we can define Bilbao as an innovative place based on professional people with a strong sense of identity who belong to a community open to the world. Innovation as such was our first step. And I have to say that so far it's been going pretty well. A new organization, not only in Bilbao, but in the whole Basque Country, was set up in 2007 called InnoBasque, the Basque Agency for Innovation, that was able from the very beginning to put together over 1,000 actors of innovation in the country. All the political institutions, the business companies, social organizations, university, you name it, they are in InnoBasque. We, Bilbao Metropolis 30 as an organization, are members of InnoBasque and work actively to promote innovation in the Basque Country. But for Bilbao Metropolis 30, the creation of this Basque Agency for Innovation meant, at the same time, that we had to move a step forward. So we went on to professionalism. But on the way, we found out that a good professional usually is not an innovative person. A worker who every day does the same thing and well, usually is not very open to changes. So we had to take a different way, a different approach, and we devoted last year to creativity, thinking that if we were able to provide a creative environment to all people, they might become innovative, not losing their quality of good professionals, okay? So we did that very successfully, and just very briefly, in the diagnosis, we came out as being a society of engineering values. And I, as an engineer, I can subscribe to that, of course. But I think that anyone who knows Bilbao can recognize that Bilbao is an engineering place, a place where people are dedicated to make things. Okay? Now, we will follow on the next years with the rest of the values. But I wanted to stress, to highlight here today, the importance of values if you compare with infrastructures. In the red line, I don't know if it is clear enough, the red line shows how you can create value, you can add importance to your organization, company, city, whatever, if you base your strategy on infrastructures. For a city, and let me ask a rhetorical question, how many more motorways can we have in the same city? How many more technology parks? How many more colleges? How many more physical things? There's a limit to how many infrastructures can we have in a city, not only a limit in terms of dimension or scale, but the limit in particular in terms of the response that those infrastructures can give to the real challenges that people have. But if you look, on the other hand, to the curve of values, at the beginning, in the outset, the ability of values to provide answers for people's challenges is not really important. So population, citizens, would rather go for a new building rather than a new idea. But after some time, the value curve gets across the infrastructures and is able to give more, not only answers, but even in terms of growth, jobs, wealth. This is the point. And this is why I believe, and in Bilbao we believe, that having moved from a primary sector that thousands and thousands of years, not only in Bilbao, but in the whole world, was our only way to create, to make our living. 300 years ago, we moved to a secondary sector, and our ability to create wealth increased dramatically, as we all know. In the last century, it was about services. And we all know today, we would agree, that services can give more answers and create more wealth than industry by itself. And what can we say about agriculture and fishing? But today we are looking at a new sector. This is the emergency of the value-based sector, where principles, values, or innovation take the role of leading society into more advanced stages of development. In the next years, we will be realizing how the focus on values such as innovation will become paradigms, not only for advanced societies, but in particular, and I want to make this statement here, for underdeveloped countries and cities who don't need to go through all the stages of development that Europe or America have been going through in the last 150 years. But instead, they can jump like a frog and skip 150 years of mistakes in terms of environment, in terms of social unrest, in terms of building things that become obsolete. So let's go straight on for the quaternary sector, not only for Europe, North America, or Japan, but in particular for the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alfonso.